This program is powered by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deakins, a Feature Group USA production.
Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO at AIM Employers Association. Recent industry research from the International Coaching Federation shows that 87% of organizations report a strong ROI from executive coaching. What that tells us is simple. When change accelerates, organizations that invest how leaders think and respond perform better. So, who's at risk and how should leaders respond? All this and more on This Week at Work.
Welcome to This Week at Work, the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode. From the latest rulings in the courtroom to the strategies unfolding in the boardroom, and from real conversations taking place on the front lines to spotlighting what similar companies are doing about the challenges they face. This Week at Work brings you the conversations that matter most to HR professionals and business leaders like you. Brought to you by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deakins, live every Thursday morning. This is your opportunity to connect with their experts and ask your burning questions. So what's keeping you up at night? Let's face it together now on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Good morning. And I got to say, Nick, thank you so much for getting some real talent on this show and bringing Melissa back by popular demand. Melissa with Ogletree Deakins, we're always happy to have her on. She's a great partner of ours. And Melissa, I don't know if you ever get tired of picking up the slack from Bert and what he leaves around, but you make it look so easy. Thank you for being back on the program.
Well, I am really excited to be back. And fortunately for me, Bert had a conflict and gave me an opportunity to come back and join you this morning. So I'm really excited about it.
Well, we're always happy to have you on the program. Do you remember last time you were on the program what we talked about?
I do remember, actually. I remember we talked about psychological safety because it had a pretty big impact, and I remember the whole episode.
Yeah, no, it was a great episode, and you're exactly right. And it fits really well with the topic today that we have as we're going to talk about coaching with one of our partners down in Florida, Leslie Mizerak. Leslie, good morning. Welcome to the program. First time.
Good morning. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you. We're going to do a little bit of legal discussion here first, and then we're going to turn it right around and talk a little bit about coaching and how coaching is impacting the world of business and leaders today. Super excited to get into that. But before we do that, Nick, do we have a special message, from Amy Hart?
We do. We'll kick it now. All right, it's time to check in with the eyes and ears of AIM and everyone's favorite AI-driven HR advisor. Amy, take it away.
Thanks,
We'll do
producer
Lawyer on the Clock after this.
Here's what's happening at AIM this week and why it matters, according to Amy. If you're trying to figure out what's keeping your leaders up at night, we've got something special. 6 in 26, the challenges shaping leadership priorities this year. It's a rapid-fire event that breaks down 6 key leadership trends for 2026, all in 26 minutes. Headlines right now are full of stories about talent gaps, aging workforces, and shifting employee expectations. That's not just noise, it's your next business challenge. That's why you'll also want to mark your calendar for March 26th when we're hosting Succession Madness, a hands-on workshop that helps you build a championship bench for the future. And then on May 15th, don't miss our 12th annual leadership conference. It's a full day designed to level up leaders at every stage. All right, so that's what's new, what's next, and what matters. All according to Amy.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
All right, Melissa, let's take it away.
All right. Well, I'm kind of digging out of a deep freeze here. I think most of the country is. So I thought I'd start with something that has a little bit to do with the cold and the snow. And the Department of Labor issued a new opinion letter that came out.
It didn't
Dealing
take
with snow
long for
days.
them to get back into action, did it?
Yeah, I did not. So this opinion letter, FMLA 2026-1, deals with snow days. And this it addresses a question that came in from a school and a school teacher who was out on FMLA leave and wondered, how does FMLA leave interact when you've got these unexpected closures? Schools close down. Does this count towards FMLA? Does it not count towards FMLA? And I think that the recent guidance is actually going to be pretty helpful for a lot of employers. It really hinges on a couple of things. One was this a planned closure. So when we're talking about snow days, normally those aren't planned closures. You don't know ahead of time. It's not like a company who might close down for the last 2 weeks of work in the year, like a furlough. So we're really talking about unplanned closures, ice, snow, things like that. And then what employers need to do is take a look at what type of FMLA leave the employee is on. So if they're on intermittent leave or partial week leave, then those days are not going to count. So if you've got someone who's on intermittent leave, for example, and their intermittent leave happens to coincide with this snow day that the school now has, that's not going to count towards their leave. But on the other side of the coin, and I think this is where it may confuse a lot of employers, is if you've got an employee that's on full week leave, they're taking their FMLA leave in work weeks. For example, let's say you've got an employee who just gave birth and they're out for 12 weeks solid. Okay. So if they're taking work weeks, then those unplanned closures, those partial week closures don't impact their FMLA leave at all. That full week still counts, even though maybe school was only in session for 2 days out of the 5. They're still charged for the full 5 days for the full work week. So that was it was a good clarification. Very, very timely considering where we are with all these snow days. I know my kiddos had snow days this week. So and I think a lot of businesses actually had to close. So this
So Melissa, I like the topic. So we reference like the school districts and teachers where there's, it's closed. For businesses that sometimes, you'll see it a lot in manufacturing or other businesses. Some people can work from home, and so they're assigned, hey, it's just work from home day. For those people who are required to come into the office, it's often left to the safety conscious of the person to say, do you think you can get here safely, depending on where you live and what the road conditions are between your home and the office or the work environment. You get to make that decision. But either way, we won't count you absent, and we won't give you a mark against your attendance. How does that play out in a scenario like that as it relates to FMLA? So maybe the first one is I'm a salaried person and you work from home. So that would still be FMLA in my mind because it's still a work day, just the location changed. Work from home versus the office.
So a lot of it's going to hinge on whether or not they were scheduled to work and able to work, and then whether they did in fact work. So if you've got someone who's scheduled to work and they're able to work from home, which is going to be a great transition into topic number 2 here, but if they're able to work from home, then it's not going to count as an FMLA day. A lot of employers are going to have to fall back on their own policies, though, to see whether or not on these unplanned closures, if it's not truly a closure, the business hasn't completely closed down, like a school where it's the doors are shuttered and
that's usually more black and white in a school district.
That is definitely a clear-cut issue. But where you've got situations where some employees work from home, you mentioned manufacturing. That's a great example. Obviously, assembly line workers aren't going to be able to perform their work from home. So that particular segment of the business is shuttered for all intents and purposes. And that employer is going to have to make a decision either by policy or, as a business as a whole, how they're going to treat that. And if that is going to be considered a closure and it's intermittent, then it's going to count towards their FMLA leave.
Yeah.
If it's considered a closure and it's a week-long FMLA leave, then it's not going to impact the overall accrual and counting of FMLA in the process. So a lot of it's going to be falling back on these policies and what the policy says in the event of inclement weather and when the employer actually closes or has to partially close, how they treat that.
Yeah, no, that's some great clarity. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
glad we got a little bit of clarity on that. Thank you. What else we have,
Well,
Melissa?
I'm going to transition right into another remote work case. And this is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I do a lot of advice and counsel on remote work. And there is a recent decision out of the Fourth Circuit that kind of extrapolates on what we've known and what we've seen being the trend with remote work. And that is, courts are all in agreement that indefinite periods of remote work are not a reasonable accommodation for a disability. So someone coming to you and saying, I need to work from home indefinitely, that is not considered a reasonable accommodation. Well, what this Fourth Circuit case says in Kaufman versus Next Star Media is they have a pregnant employee who has some complications, goes out, uses her 12 weeks of FMLA for bonding and other things. And then due to these complications, she's then on short-term disability leave. And she says, I don't want to return to work. Instead, let me work remotely. And the court looked at a couple of things. First of all, said you don't have a definite return to work date. So again, indefinite return remote work is not a reasonable accommodation. But secondly, the fact that you're on short-term disability tells us that you're not able to work. That means you're not fit for work, whether it's
at home or in the office.
Correct. And this was a little nuance that we haven't seen in some of the case law previously. So they looked at it and they said, if you qualify for short-term disability, that necessarily means that you are not able to work. And therefore, that remote work is not a reasonable accommodation again. And so the court upheld summary judgment in favor of the employer.
Yeah, that's an interesting ruling because a lot of people and those that call our hotline and that we get into interactions with, it is a complication or a technical barrier to get past. They're like, well, we do allow people to work from home on a regular basis or for extended periods, but it's not indefinite. And I think that's the difference here. So is it recommended then in a case like that it's reviewed periodically, or we can extend this for 2 months, 3 months, and we will review it every 3 months for whether it continues to be feasible? How do we go forward in a scenario like that?
Absolutely. This is where the ADA interactive process is going to be really vital, is having those conversations with employees to understand what their capabilities are, what their return to work date is. That was also one of the nuances of this case, is that after the manager checked in, this particular employee texted back and said, don't contact me again. I'm not telling you when I'm coming back to work, essentially. And that the court looked at and said, the interactive process is really vital and key here. You've got to work together to figure out when the employee is going to be able to come back. So I think that played a role in the court's decision.
Yeah, I always remind people interactive process involves, and this is going to be a great segue to Leslie, the interactive process involves, me and you, or the employer and the employee. It's not one way. It's not the burden of one of us. It's the burden for both of us to achieve. Yeah.
That's a point I make in almost all of my policies when I'm working with employers, to say the interactive process is a process where both the employer and the employee have to work together. And if the employee does not participate, that could result in a denial of whatever accommodation is being requested.
Now, it's always a good idea for our policies to be reviewed regularly and so forth, but with either one of these decisions in the letter from the Department of Labor, is there anything that you think particularly requires a policy change, assuming someone has a policy that is otherwise up to date?
I think as long as your policies are up to date, what I find is sometimes employers think their policies are up to date and they could use a little more detail. For example, if you've got a policy on inclement weather, how you are treating those partial closures of a business that you mentioned
Right.
earlier, Phil, where you
Yeah.
might have a situation where
Optional.
optional, right? You're leaving it up. Well, how are you treating that? Is it treated as a closure? Is it treated as an absence? And then on the remote work, just having a policy and making sure that employees know, is remote work even an option? Is in-office presence an essential function of the job? Those are things that are going to be key when you're looking at whether or not remote work is even an option for an employee as an accommodation to a disability.
Yeah. Excellent. Great. I appreciate that, Melissa. I'm just going to point out some of the chat line is calling you out saying, great job. We love these stories. Very interesting. No one ever compliments Bert. It's just,
Well,
yeah,
I
I
was
think,
joking earlier, Phil. I said when I fill in for Bert, usually the first question I get is, "Where is Bert?"
yeah.
And so I'm appreciative of the comments that are, directed to me. That's great.
Yeah. No, that is good. We'll make sure to send a copy of those to Bert, but we appreciate some of that feedback there. Thank you, Reba. But also, let's transition right to you, Leslie. And Christopher is saying, and he's on LinkedIn, he's saying, you are awesome and a great coach. And I'm not going to call out Christopher's last name, but I'm assuming you know who Christopher is. And Leslie, that tells me you need no introduction when our listeners are already blowing up the chat line and dropping some great comments. But welcome to the program. I know that you're a Jeep lover, and your Jeeps, the number of Jeeps rival the number of shoes that you have. Tell us a little bit about your Jeeps.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to pay Chris later, and I have three Jeeps. My husband and I say we're a small family with a big Jeep problem. So we have 3 Jeeps, an 86, a 90, and a 2013 Wrangler. So we love our Jeeps.
Excellent. Do you like the four-wheel off-road, four-wheel drive off-road?
We are mostly on the road and love to take it to the beach.
All right, so you're a
Top
mall
off and go to
crawler
the beach.
and a beach crawler.
You
Got
got
it.
it.
Awesome. Well, Leslie, let's get one thing off the table, because anytime I'm talking about coaching, even though it's really been a while since I think this has been a true statement, but at least in my experience growing up as a younger man, if you were given the feedback that we were going to assign you a coach, it was basically the death sentence of your employment, right? You knew, and everyone knew, oh, your days are limited. This is the last step in the process. And then someone like Melissa would get involved as a lawyer to create the separation of agreement for us. And there was really no turning back from being assigned a coach. Let's put that to rest, because that is not at all today how coaching is utilized for the large part.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for bringing that up. This is not what we teach today. We need to manage our employees. We need to have feedback conversations and difficult conversations and accountability conversations. Coaching doesn't do that. Coaching is not an employee relations tool. It's a growth tool. It's an employee retention tool. So that's how we need to reframe it. It's how we go forward. It's how we grow.
Yeah, and I know that many of the jobs I've done in recent years, I'm assigning coaches because I'm really working to improve in performance. And what I have found when I've done that right, many employees come back, and when the coaching period ends, and I, in this case, was not recommending coaching for poor performance. I was just trying to improve the performance of the organization. And so we had certain people on our radar that we wanted to provide coaching to. And many times they were some of our most coveted groups of people from a talent standpoint, our highest performers, not always, but sometimes. And when the coaching cycle went in, this is how I knew it was successful. They came back and said, hey, I don't want this to end. Can we extend it for another 6 months? Or I really value this, and I'd rather have more coaching and less formal education. Can you talk a little bit just about what are some of the reasons you get involved in coaching?
Well, coaching really is a bit of a partnership that creates this space for leaders to think clearly, to act very intentionally, and choose how they want to show up. So people come to coaching for many, many reasons. It can be succession prep, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later. It could be showing up as a more effective leader. It could be building communication skills. There's so much going on. And right now, it is more critical than it's ever been.
Yeah. And so when we talk about that, one of the things that I think really impacts employers today is kind of the speed of change and how that impacts the way we need to think and perform. Let's talk a little bit about just coaching to help people deal with the speed of change and or all the noise that's in the workforce, whether it's political noise or social unrest or, all the complications of compliance that Melissa just shared, and that starts to be a burden and become a distraction for leaders. How do we address that, particularly in the case of speed of change?
Yeah. Well, change has always happened throughout kind of our whole world, right? But it is happening at such a fast pace. You think a couple of years ago, none of us were talking about AI.
No.
Everybody's talking about AI, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Amy is telling us what's going on. It's really cool. So it's happening. And um, coaching allows people to rethink how they can adapt for these changes. It lets them think about the trajectory they've been on and the trajectory that's coming. Change is scary for people. It is very normal for it to be scary, and it's scary for almost everybody. And especially when that change feels more like chaos. So it's a way to sit and have space and think about how I want to show up in this change, how I want to bring my team forward in this change. It's imperative because change is happening. You have to get on that change boat and go with it.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed yesterday, I was doing some prep for the program. Most people don't realize that I actually spend any time preparing because it doesn't ever show. But I ran across some of your information on LinkedIn, and I would just want to talk a little bit about there's also a role that a coach can play that I think is really important when there's that really fine line between maybe there's a little bit of mental illness versus need for coaching and where that becomes a very gray space. A personal coach like yourself, who's professionally trained and very experienced at doing this, will pick up, actually this person is suffering from a little bit of depression, for an example, and we need to make sure to get them support in addition to the coaching. And you had a LinkedIn video I saw on something about this. Can you just talk about that for a moment?
Yeah. So, we all have these brains that do amazing things. And sometimes our brains just get caught up in past traumas, past drama, past experiences. We get stuck in anxiety or depression. I can't diagnose it, but I can say, it feels like it's going to help you to talk with a therapist so you can work through some of the past issues so that when you come back to coaching, we can move forward. Because coaching is all about what's happening in this moment and how you go forward. We can't fix anything in the past. It can inform our behaviors, but therapy allows someone to really deal with issues in their past, in their history. And so it's a completely different experience. And I, in my life and my professional life, have had the opportunity to send several clients to talk with therapists and then come back to coaching when they're ready for the moving forward. They've cleared up or worked through those things that are holding them back.
Yeah.
Right? We all
Yeah.
have stuff in our life, and sometimes we can get through it pretty quickly, and sometimes we just need a space to talk, and that's what therapy can be so valuable for. So that
Yeah.
is work I do not do, but I will definitely recommend people talk with someone and see if that's going to be helpful for them.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm happy to hear you say that because I know any of the coaches I've ever worked with, they recognize and they're in tune to be able to say, okay, yes, we need to do some coaching, but there's something else here and you can recommend that to the individual, and no shame in that. And it's really about how we're all moving together and moving forward. But let's talk a little bit about coaching and training and how they work together. How do you like to see that come together?
Well, training is phenomenal. That's how I started my leadership career. 30 years ago, I started in the leadership training space, and I love training. It gives me a lot of energy. I don't do it as much anymore. Training is really about building capability, and coaching is really about how we apply it. I think training and coaching go hand in hand beautifully.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Training is an event. It's an event.
Yeah.
And what happens after that event varies by how people have engaged, what they've picked up. And quite often, coaching is that follow on tool that really lets them take that learning or that skill that they talked about and worked on in training and apply it. Just think about surgeons. I use this example quite a bit, right? A surgeon goes to medical school. If they just read the book and watch the videos, do we really want them opening us up?
No.
Probably not, right? They need to practice. So it's different from coaching, but they're getting hands-on practice. Coaching is that opportunity to get hands-on practice with support, whether it's through role play one-on-one or planning what you're going to do in action this next 2 weeks, and then coming back and talking about what worked and what didn't work and what I want to do differently, how my employee behaved, how I behaved, the learning that comes out of that. So they go hand in hand. And I love this quote that I heard years ago: training fills the notebook, but coaching changes what leaders actually do on Monday morning.
Yeah, that's a nice quote. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can agree with that. Hey, would you be open to coaching Bert Garland for us? Yeah, he could
Yeah,
use some
I
coaching.
can't wait to meet
Poor
Bert.
Yeah.
Bert might be able to coach me. He sounds like he's a pretty amazing guy.
So
Yeah, no, go ahead, Melissa.
I was going to say, I have a question for you that maybe you could help tie this together for me. I actually do management training for
Mhm.
employers. And one of the things that I find is kind of the stigma or the stereotype that training is for new employees, coaching is for bad employees.
Mm.
And how do we get past that? Because to me, I think you nailed it earlier when you said, coaching is to make you better. It's not necessarily because you're deficient, it's to help you grow.
Mhm.
How do we get past that?
So training for new employees, if that were the case, we would get trained and never need to learn anything. We would not need to learn any new skills. We would automatically know everything. That is hogwash. I'm just going to use that word. How about that? And it's not true, right? Yes, training is used for new employees because a new employee needs to learn about the organization. They need to maybe learn a new skill. Maybe they need to learn the job that they're stepping into. But the thing is, people don't stay in a job once and then never leave it. They move jobs, and every job comes with different learning opportunities. They may need to be upskilled or differently skilled. Talked about change earlier. With all of the change that's happening in the world, people are moving from Excel spreadsheets to really working in much more AI presentations. That's training. That's a training, whether it's a sit down classroom or an online. That is training. That's
Yeah.
learning.
I
And
mean, and just so you know, we still have people sending very experienced people, not bad people, to training for Excel. So,
and I love
forget AI
Excel.
just for a minute. I mean, one of
Yeah.
our most popular programs, still well attended, is Excel training.
Yeah.
It isn't only for new employees, but I love that line, Melissa. It's a great line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, one last question here, Leslie. Let's One of our 6 and 26 that Amy Hart was talking about just a moment ago is that employers are reaching this critical stage. And I mean, that's an important word when you use the word critical. This critical stage when it comes to succession development. And not only succession for executive leaders, and what makes it critical is that it's succession throughout an organization at many levels. How does coaching play out with high potentials or for the purpose of succession?
Yeah, it really moves them from being a high potential or potentially next in line to being ready for that opportunity. It's a movement, it's a shift. You can have a phenomenal salesperson and think, oh my gosh, they're going to be the next sales leader when I retire or move on to my next role. But the roles are completely different. So it is much more about how you lead people as you're moving up. And the further you move up a ladder, the larger the leadership experience is. So it's about getting them ready for that next role. It reduces risk by preparing these leaders both skill-wise as well as emotionally. It helps from, let's see how this person does, and really knows that we can get them ready so they can do project work. There are some special things to get them involved as they move forward. And there's just a lot of benefits in succession thinking, succession planning, and then succession coaching, because we need to build our bench. Somebody could hit the $1 billion lottery and be like, I'm not coming back to work tomorrow. We need to know that we've got people ready that can do that. But it also increases our loyalty. It fosters innovation. And we need to make sure that our people are ready to move forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Melissa, Leslie, thank you both for being on the program. If you're new to This Week at Work and you're joining for the first time, hit the subscribe button there. We do this every week. We try to have a little bit of fun. We try to bring you the most relevant legal updates as we can each week. And we always have a guest as wonderful as Leslie was today that brings us some important business insights. It's the only program like it. We do it every week. And we will be back here next week at 7:30 Central Time. We'll see you then. Until then, go be good to somebody.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar every week. Ask your burning questions anytime and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. Just go to hrask.org and be sure to leave a review wherever you catch our show to help other HR pros find us as well. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.